like to introduce you to our first speaker, and that's Adrian Leong. Adrian Leong is the Managing Director and Investor of, how do I pronounce that? You know, I don't want to sound so rude. Adrian.
Well, it's called Ansacia International.
Ansacia International, yes. So Adrian is well-versed in Indo-China business and security environments. He has experience driving numerous risk assignments, including market survey, enforcement, and so on. So basically, he's a veteran in Asia when it comes to that. And he, in his span of 35-year career, he has worked and consulted in the following industry. So government-linked institution, which he will walk you through based on what he has done. So basically a very widespread cross-industry experience there. But what's really interesting is at some point in his career, right, since 1995, he actually made some headway into the Vietnamese market. But why Vietnam and not China and any other country? I'll leave that to him to explain to you. There's actually more to his background. In fact, when Adrian spoke with me, he told me about his list of companies that he owned, and all I said to him is, Adrian, I'm sorry, there isn't enough space to squeeze in everything. So you will have to pick, okay? Now he has a very interesting journey that he's gonna share with you. And today's topic is about how he discovered his professional identity. All right, so I'm gonna just stop share here
session, but
and
today,
on.
First of all, I'd like to welcome you to my home. I've never invited 200 people in my house before. It's just a one-bedroom, yes.
Adrian, there's 256.
I know. So
you,
I just broke the record, right? So if anybody's to come to they got to queue up outside.
You're stuck in Vietnam, so sorry.
But just to orientate you guys. So this is my home. So grab a coffee, and that's my kitchen behind, and maybe we can have a session how to cook chicken. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So yes. So let's get started. So I've already spoken. It's pandemic time, and I've not left the house. I mean, basically, yes, for food and stuff like that. We have the army people that's delivering food to the doorstep, but not in my district. So depending on where you're living. So that's the kind of situation over here to try to keep you in your house and make sure that, you know, this COVID situation is taken care. Now, for the last 4 months, I've been here. Or last 3 months, I've been at home. I've not gone for a haircut. So, well, I just started a new trend. I've got a little ponytail over here. So, I mean, so you can just imagine. Let's go on to the next slide. So today, I basically will be presenting my career journey. There are 3 parts of it. First, as a corporate man. Second, as a business owner. And lastly, what I'm doing is in regards to my risk consulting business. And we sort of narrow down to today's topic about employment screening and about work attitudes and personality. So Adrian, the corporate man. So like many of you, we have all worked in different capacity. Just now when you did that whole survey, when you describe yourself, I begin to have understanding who I'm talking to. A lot of you are professionals. A lot of you who have done probably taken the same path I would have taken 10, 20 years ago. My career path started when I guess in the army, just like many of the Singaporeans. I'm Singaporean, from the army, where we learned how to work together and how to be disciplined. And it was good training. I mean, we sort of dread going for the army camp and stuff like that. But, you know, on the hindsight, yeah, it did teach me a little thing. Now, the picture you see in front is a bar. What does a bar counter got to do with my career? Well, when I was in university, I was in the US, I was also working at the same time. I mean, my dad paid for the tuition fees, but that was all. If I needed a car, I needed extra food, I wanted to bring my girlfriend out, I've got to work. So that's what I did. While studying, I was working as a bartender and working in a banquet. At the same time, I mean, over there, I learned how to organize. And every time when I go to a wedding, for example, I'll say, oh, guys, I can do a better job than this. So every career that I sort of jumped into, I've sort of learned something. Now, that's a security guard. Yes, I was also a security guard. I remember I was in Houston, Texas during winter time. It was so cold, but you know, the army training sort of taught me, you know, just got to do your stuff. You got to be disciplined. You got to keep awake. You got to finish your walk the walk, you know. I graduated, but in those days, in the 80s, in Houston, Texas, that was a very bad time, the oil crisis, and there was no job. And with a marketing degree, basically, I couldn't find a job. So basically, anyway, I got a job as a car salesman. I still remember the car, it's Hyundai. They just launched Hyundai cars. It was about 5,000 in the US. And that taught me how to communicate with others, some different culture, and taught me how to be thick-skinned a little bit. I also worked shortly in the investment. I went into trading in commodities. And again, things were so bad. The minute I went in, it was Black Friday. It went down 30 points. I lost all my entire savings as I was training how to be a trader. So in each of the career that I changed, I have learned something. Now I came back to Singapore. My first job was a banker. Not really a banker, I was doing finance. I was working with the SMEs, providing them loans. You know, while I was going into working in Singapore, I still remember there was a situation whereby, you know, I was studying in Texas, and I'm the type that I get myself so, what you call, immersed into the culture. And I came back, I'm not speaking Singlish. I spoke like a Texan, y'all. And it was quite unnatural. I mean, I went to a interview, and I was dressed like this. And people don't dress in suit for an executive position. But I was dressed in a suit, and I was speaking funny, you know, y'all, with a southern cowboy kind of Texan accent. So anyway, I got a job, marketing executive, and I learned a lot. I went on to work for Abacus, that's with the airline system. I did my MBA during that time. And it was fun because my peers were all about the same age. They party, we do everything together. So I had a fun time. But the only thing is while I was doing my MBA, everybody was going out for a lunch, I was doing my assignments. But you know, that's life. I later went on to work with the Metro Group. I learned a lot. Thank you, Mrs. Wong and Arthur. They're all retired. But they taught me as we traveled to each country. I was a business development manager. As we traveled to different countries, exploring opportunities for the Metro Group. I learned so much from them. They are really streetwise. They are well traveled. So, now I learned about legal, about the political situation, about the economics. And I was involved also with a joint venture. I'm not sure you guys remember Kmart. There was Kmart in Singapore. That's the US company. So I was involved in the Kmart project. And I was working 16 hours a day. I was so burnt out, you know. US is a different time zone. So I was working till late 11 p.m. just to communicate with the US and get the answer. So I was working 16 hours a day. I was pretty burnt out at the time. I still remember when I was traveling with Mrs. Wong, the MD of Metro, and she said, Adrian, aren't you tired of us? You're with us almost 24 hours a day. Aren't you tired? Don't you just want to get out? And I remember when she spoke this, we were in the car, I was sitting in front, and I said, yeah. And I just opened the door and just walked out. I mean, that was how stressed I was, you know? But I'm sure all of you have experienced that. Yeah. After they set up the store, the Kmart store, my boss asked me, Adrian, we're going to focus on the Kmart store. We're going to train you as a store manager. I was thinking to myself, no, I'm not a retailer. I'm a business development person, not a retailer. So I say, okay, I think I'll take a break from work and travel for a little while. And so that's the next picture, next slide. So I went over to Vietnam. Now, just before that, I was going back. In all the what I call career move that I go through, there's a very steep learning curve, that's for sure. There's no running away from it. When you go from bank to with the government link and even to retail, the first 6 months is tough. But ultimately, you learn and it strengthens you and molds you to what you are today. Now, the questions about why Vietnam and not China. I still remember when I was in China, for one, my Mandarin was not so good. My Chinese, I didn't do too well, and I was never good in languages. So I still remember traveling around China, and that was 25 years ago or longer. China was just opening up, but the people were so sharp. I still remember in Shanghai, just the restaurant manager, she was so sharp. And I realized being a corporate man, I will be sliced up pretty quickly if I decide to do business there. Such a corporate man. Vietnam was just coming out. A friend of mine, he set up the first hotel in Hanoi, the Heritage Hotel. And he said, Adrian, yeah, come up to Vietnam. Yeah, give yourself a break. Adrian Leong, the corporate man. I just got my MBA, 8 years of working experience. No problem. So there I was, I arrived in Vietnam. You see the picture in front of you. It's, you know, it's trying to go back in time, 1995. When I first came to Vietnam, I sold my car. I broke up with my girlfriends. I was young then, yeah? Yeah, so I left everything behind and I came over to Vietnam. And I mentioned I sold my car, so I was driving. And I came to Vietnam, there were no cars around. So I wanted to cross the street. There were no traffic light in 1995 in Hanoi those days. I was going to cross the street. There are so many bicycles and motorbikes. There was this old lady. She sort of sat selling cigarettes. And after a little while, he sort of like shook her head. He came up to me and took me by the arm and he led me slowly across the street. A 90 years old lady helping me to cross the street. Mr. MBA. Well, I began to learn something. If I needed to survive in Vietnam, I needed to put aside my MBA, I needed to put aside my 8 years of working experience, and I have to reinvent myself because with the skills that I have learned in Singapore, the different jobs that I have, it's not going to prepare me. I can't even cross the street with that. Like I say, I was like a fish out of water. I had to learn how to swim again, how to communicate. First of all, I'm never good with languages, how to cross the street, how to look for food. And yeah, the environment that I was so used to, whether it's cultural, in Singapore, the economics, I think we had an MRT then, social, the political. I'm in Vietnam. It's a communist state. Culture is different. There are about 39 ethnic groups. Of course, there's a main language. The social scene is different. Let me give you an example. When I walk into the bar for a drink, all the girls will sort of look at me. Nowadays, when I walk to the bar, none of the girls will even blink at me. The environment has changed, 1995 and now. And how did I survive in Vietnam with the language? Well, I learned a couple of phrases. And so when I'm with a group of guys having dinner or food, they'll say, Adrian, are you married? And then I'll say, "Vợ là cơm bò là phở." They're all, and I say, "Vợ là cơm bò là phở, ăn phở nì." Well, what it means is rice is likened to eating rice. You eat it every day. So it's, you get tired of it sometimes.
I wonder if we have anyone who understands Vietnamese.
That's what I'm trying to explain. So, "Vợ là cơm bò là phở." So, cơm is like rice. It's like rice is likened to wife. You eat it every day, and it's common. Vợ bò là phở. Your girlfriend is likened to eating noodles. You eat it once in a little while. So it's very delicious. So my answer would be, I take a lot of noodles. Ăn phở nhiều. And they all will burst out laughing. I broke the ice. And that's how, and then after a little that, we just eat, we just get to know each other. And that's basically how we begin to move along. To understand the culture part of it. Now, if I'm going to describe to you, now we're talking about my business journey. Because I'm in Vietnam now. I've left the corporate world and I'm putting on my business hat. Now, the picture taken was in 2016. So I'm going to describe to you my business journey. It hasn't been smooth sailing. It's just like my corporate world, and you go for different jobs. Well, starting a business is not so easy as well. So for me to relate about my business experience is going to take a long time. So what I'll do, what I've done actually to fast track my business journey, my business journey is like how I look at myself in the last few years. I was working a lot. I was doing business. At one time, I had a clinic, and my partner ran away with the money. I mean, you have problems like that because in those times, the laws were not for the foreign investors. The laws were different then. And so it was so easy to get cheated, and I was cheated. The important thing is I stayed on. Now, so I started a company. In fact, 2 companies about 15 years ago, one that's involved in skincare. I represent an American skincare Palmer. And then I'm also in security SEAL. So those times, I was just working very hard, traveling because, to Australia, to China, to look for opportunities for the companies in Vietnam. Now, same time, I also had my business consultancy business, the risk consultant. I will talk about that later. But just to go back on these pictures, if you look at the pictures now, I was always been on the heavy side. Fat to be correct word to use. I'm always fat. And I still remember on the second picture, that is in Chongqing, China. I was there and we had to climb this, I wouldn't call it mountain, a hill. It was just a 2-hour climb and I was panting away. I was so unfit. I couldn't even climb up, And that's a picture of Changi village with the sunset. Again, you can see that I didn't look so healthy. Another picture in China, not in China, in Vietnam when I was doing charity work. But again, like I say, I came to a point where I was working quite aimlessly. I was just working and I wasn't caring about my health. The business was also not so good. I realized I got to transform myself. I got to reinvent myself, just as I did with my career before and try to learn in everything that I do. The same is for my own business journey. You see the transformation. What I did was a friend of mine said, Adrian, take this course, NLP course. And so I did. It was in Da Nang, and my coach, Ming Tam, spent 3 days coaching me on NLP. At the end of it, she asked me, Adrian, so what have you learned? Only one word came up to my mind, just like the poll, you have one word to describe it. Well, I had one word to describe it. And I remember saying, enlightenment. Whatever I've learned in the past 3 days is what I've learned in the army, in the university, in psychology, in the different management course I took. But what NLP had done for me is to sort of package it. In NLP, you learn about the wheel of life, about your love, about your career, and how to balance it. Very important thing that the course taught me was to be positive. Don't look back, look forward. I reinvent myself. I try to evolve with the environment. I began to run. I began to exercise every day. In the office, my attitude towards work. Of course, there's a lot of negative things that always surround you, whether it is your partners or whether it is the customers. I kept myself very positive. Now, as we are speaking right now, it's lockdown. My 2 companies are locked down for the past 3 months. I still got to pay rent. I still got to pay salary. 2 of my employees actually set up another competing company against me. Am I sad? No, I'm disappointed, of course. But the important thing, I did not build my company on loose soil. I had a firm foundation. I started 16 years ago. I have some key customers that stay with me. That is a party I had with the skincare company called Lamy, 16th anniversary. So that was just last year. So we're all dressed up in suits. I hardly come out in suits, but that was one of the time. And yeah, we had fun and we with the customers, with my colleagues and staff. Now, did I fail? business journey? Did I fail? I must be kidding you if I say that, no, everything was very rosy. It was not rosy. Like I mentioned to you, I'm using my physical self. When I climbed the mountain, did I fall? Yes, I did, very badly. Look, I almost broke my knee. I still remember when I was in the hospital just last December. And not for the first time in my life, I came into Facebook. I never had a Facebook until 2 years ago. I'm a very low profile person. But because of charity, because of the compassion to help others, I started Facebook. And in this picture, when I was in the hospital bed, I was telling everybody, hey, I'm down, I'm out, I'm going for a knee surgery, but I'm coming back. And you can see how bad I was hurt when I fell off the mountain. Now, the next picture of me is on a clutch, and you can see next to it, I walked 12 kilometers, one leg, yes, one leg down, I still got the other. So yes, in business, we fail, just as in our physical conditioning. In my corporate journey, every step, of course, was not easy. It was a steep learning curve, but along the way, I learned different skills. As a business owner, same time, of course, I failed many times. I was in clinic, I was in distributor of motorcycles, I did a couple of things, and some I sold, some failed. So yeah, that's the environment that you got to operate in. It's not like in Singapore. Part 3, we're sort of like going down to narrow down on the things that we're going to talk about, which is about employment screening later. Who am I? So I'm a business risk consultant. So what do I do? So basically, I assist company to mitigate their risks overseas or locally. But most of my clients, they are from US and from Europe. In those countries, there are some regulatory requirement before they do business in the new country in regards to fraud and corruption issues, child labor. So I give you sort of like a case study, because like I say, I do different aspects of risk work. I'm not an expert in all, but basically I can do all of those. But when I need assistance, of course, I'll ask the expert to come in to work with me on those projects. Now, we'll talk about due diligence right now and investment environment. A Singapore company, I wouldn't say Singapore company because I don't have too many Singapore customers. Why? Because the way that we do business is on one seat. Like in China, a handshake. For the Americans and for the Europeans, that's not the way. That's not the way to do it. They will check the background of the partners that they're going to do business with. Not because they want to, but because they're required to under the law. So what do they check about? Let's say we don't use Singapore, we use a US company. The financial people will check up on the assets, the liability, the accountants, the contracts, the benefits. They will call upon me to check on the others. I will conduct media checks. I will conduct legal checks to see whether the potential partners have any legal issues. What is the newspaper talking about them in the home country? Are there any civil case that's happening? Are they affiliated to any governments? Do they have any other companies that might be a conflict of interest to your company? You're getting married to a foreign wife. It's a partnership. It's a marriage.
I really like this particular diagram itself because you mentioned quite often in our conversation about the 7-point check.
Yes.
My first role with the government sector, I know for a fact that they do pretty thorough background check. But it's interesting to see that, because you are in the business of risk consulting, so certainly all this compliance check is also very important to know a little bit more than what we see, right?
That's
there.
right. Yes, exactly.
Very nice.
Now,
yeah.
if you come to this slide, this is actually, we call it the 7-point employment screening. But actually, when we go back to the previous slide.
Okay, sorry.
That same points that we just saw.
Yeah.
I would say 5 out of the 7 points there, you have to do on the potential partner as well. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, while you do it on the individual, we also do it on the company. And we do it on the company and the key directors of that company. So, so when you have already invested and now you're in this environment where you're operating in a foreign country. Again, they will call upon me to assist them in doing vendor screening because they were appointed distributors and stuff like that. They want to make sure that it is the correct distributor. That's externally. Internally, if they are going to hire a marketing director, for example, they want to make sure that they are hiring the correct person. Now, in a third world country where there's a lot of fake degrees, where the labor law protects the employee and not the employer, these checks are necessary because you can put anything in the CV and it's not easy to check. If you are a HR manager and somebody calls upon you and say, hey, had this guy worked in your company before? They say, yes, they work from this part to this period. And that's it. They will not give a reason why they've been fired or told to leave. We talk about employment screening right now. So this is something which I guess everybody should be aware of because we're talking about professional identity, about interviews later. So depending on, so for example, right now, if I am asked by a legal person in the company to conduct a check on a very senior person that they're going to employ. Now, they've already done their shortlisting. They have probably done their second interviews and third interviews. And that's where they call me. Say, Adrian, we're going to hire this guy to be our marketing director. Can you do a employment screening on him? I'll be given the CV, I'll be given his ID. I will do a check to see whether his address is where it's supposed to be. I'll conduct a meter checks. Now, all of us, I'm sure, are on Facebook. Well, I just got into Facebook just 2 years ago. But the information that you put in there, well, I will check those besides checking the local press to see who you are, who are your friends. I'll conduct corporate checks on you to see whether you have any other companies or your wife or your relative have companies that might be competing in the company that you're going to work with. I'll conduct legal checks, financial checks, credit checks. Very important. I will conduct reputation checks. And with the reputation checks, your ex-colleague will tell me, hey, what sort of person you are. Now, the thing is, you might not want me to be the one interviewing because if I'm going to interview you as a risk consultant, you're probably in trouble. Because the kind of interviews I will be conducting will be interrogative interviews. Now, a friend of mine helped me to come up with this that question that you have. We put it into like a scale, 5 points. I'm going to speak. It's going to be very wide if we just talk generally. So I'm going to pretend right now I'm an employer right now in my cosmetic company. I'm looking for a marketing manager.
Right.
So I'm looking for a marketing manager. So my partner, my GM, has already shortlisted a couple of names for me to interview. He's done all the checking on CV and then comes to me and then, okay, personality. Is it important? Now, the marketing manager is coming to fill the place. Has got to work with the design people. He's got to work with the sales staff. He's got to work with the general manager. I've got to make sure that the person fits in, that his personality fits with the company, attitudes and stuff like that. Work attitudes. Yes, it's important. I look into your CV and see how long you've been working for a particular company. I'll ask a couple of questions and see how you answer them. And if you're telling me that, oh, I need to come to work at 8 and go back at 5, government time, Chenghu time. I'm not saying that it's wrong. If you're working for the government, that's what we do in Singapore. But I'm talking when you're working for the private sector, when you're having your own business, you can't be employing people like that. As the marketing manager, you are the role leader also as well. So people will be looking at you. Have I hired the wrong person? Yes, I did. Not me, but my partner insisted, hey, we need to get this lady. She used to be working for an advertising company. She lasted only 6 months. Did she do great work? Okay, she did. She did have a connection. Problem was her work attitude. She comes in at 10 o'clock because she says she works late and, and she goes back at 4. I later found out why, because she was also doing some outside work. What was bad was affecting the others. When we're going to have a meeting at 9 o'clock, we're waiting for her. So the work attitude was wrong. It all depends when you're working. It all depends on the role that you're going to fit in. The role, that kind of job. If you're going to be a computer person, you're going to be by yourself, then personality and stuff maybe doesn't affect so much. So that's how I will be making the decision, depending on the role that you're taking on with the company. Now, are we ready for post-COVID pandemic? Well, if you are going for a career change, if you have to change your career, you got to reinvent yourself. The learning is going to be tough, but hey, we got to persevere. It's COVID time right now. We have to evolve. We can't just sit back and just hope when this COVID is over, things are going to be the same. No, things are not going to be the same. Whether it's career-wise, whether it's business-wise, I hope 2 of my companies will survive this. I believe it will. But there you go. That's my business journey. When you are coming to Vietnam, give me a call. Send me a note. We have coffee together. We have some pho, some noodles together. But anyway, God bless.
Yep. Thank you so much. And I really like your 7-pointer background check that you have shared with us.